Hello and welcome, social media practitioners. This is David, here with Britt Espinoza, here to talk about best practices in the post 2.0 web. We are currently live on YouTube, Ustream, YouNow, StreamUp, Periscope, Meerkat, and Rabbit. And
Nice.
again, I don't know if that's ever going to keep going. I mean, maybe I'll continue to add more and more services when a new startup comes out with one, but that's the plan. Before I get into the main material and before I introduce our guest, I like to get into some feedback, and namely an email from Mr. Pat Cashman. He is the voice you hear at the beginning of the show, the male voice, and he says, in regards to the podcast, "Love it, David. You've inspired me to think about ways to extend our own podcast's reach and add the video element. I just need to figure out how we can afford all the makeup required. Really nice, clean, pro job on your first outing. You sound like you've been doing it for years." Pat, thank you so much. I can tell you exactly how much money I spend on makeup, and it's zero. I come as I am, whatever I'm wearing. Maybe I get back from work and I start, or I'm just lounging around. So I wouldn't worry about that too much. Just about getting the content out there, and you have a great show. So with that, I would like to launch into today's topic, which is about the music industry and social media. The title here is a contrived play on words with the band's name of the individual I'm about to introduce. I'm sure he's gotten a lot. We're talking about an exchange, how things have changed between how you conventionally made money as a band and now how that's different now with social media and some of the other things at play. It is my pleasure to introduce Britt Espinoza. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, David.
Of course. So tell us about yourself and about your band.
So, like David said, my name's Britt. I've toured for the past 5 years in an alternative pop rock band called The Exchange. We average, in general, probably about 100 to 120 shows a year. On top of that, I've also toured and been hired to tour in several other groups. So, per year, I can be touring between 100 to 100 shows a year out on the road. So it's been pretty busy. I'm the lead singer. I play piano and guitar, and I'm the main manager of our Facebook social media site.
Excellent. So now, as I understand, you guys recently came out. There's two pieces of news. One, you guys came out, actually three, really. First off, you guys got a deal. Tell me about your recent deal.
We just signed an exclusive licensing deal, basically being signed to a label with a label out of Seattle called Save the City Records.
Excellent. That's a big deal, right?
That's huge. We're super pumped to be partnered with them.
Yeah, that's great. So that's the first big news. The other news is you guys came out with a single and your first music video, right?
Yep. The single we came out with is called Heartbeat. And we also were super stoked about it because it was the very first music video we've ever filmed. So yeah, you can go check it out.
Yeah, well, tell us a little bit about the process. Like, did you have someone in mind to hire to film it beforehand? Did you have to do some searching? How did that all play out?
So we for filming the music video, there was a guy up here we were good friends with when we were starting out, and he was starting out. His name was Jade Ellers, and he did really well for himself, and he actually ended up moving down to LA, and he's been shooting for some really huge bands and really big movie stars. He's more of a photographer, but he also does video. So I hit him up, a few months ago asking about this new single we were releasing and whether he'd be cool with filming it. And it turned out that he was actually going to be in Seattle later that month. And so we kind of got together a concept, and he flew up here, and we rented out Victory Studios in Seattle, and we took a whole day and we shot it. And it was a crazy shoot for our first shoot, because normally you'll have like 4 or 5 guys doing the crew stuff for it. So you'll have guys, putting the fog out, you'll have guys holding the camera, you'll have guys starting the audio track. But because it was such short notice, we only had 2 guys for the crew. So it was Jade and then a camera holder. And so we actually ended up crewing it as ourselves. So it was a really sweet learning experience, because we were doing the smoke and we were also pushing some of the cameras. And so we essentially helped shoot our own music video, which was pretty awesome.
Wow. So did you do your own storyboarding too, or was that a different process?
Yeah. That the process concept for this music video was a little different, since it wasn't going to be a huge focus on story. It was more based around some artistic shots. So if you ever watch the music video, there's also this MMA fighter doing stuff. So we were really focused on getting really cool artsy shots of them in motion and doing stuff. And then we did have one concept, since the song is called Heartbeat. We kind of have some stuff around that, and you can check that out in the video.
That's right. So actually, speaking of that, well, that's on here. I hope you don't mind if I play a little sample of it.
Oh, go for it. Go for it.
Here's a little sample of their new song, Heartbeat, new single.
We spend our whole lives living at the speed of light, chasing all we can to make our hearts beat again. The faster that we run, the more dead our hearts become, chasing all we can to make our hearts beat again.
Awesome stuff. I certainly enjoyed the video.
Thanks,
I
man.
definitely got the arts vibe from it. It was very surreal, and just I love the slow mo stuff and some of the guests you had there. Great
Well,
video. I
thank
was
you.
impressed. So let's see, what am I going to touch on here next? Right. So the third piece of news is you. Oh, that's right.
That was.
You just posted a Facebook post about it.
Yeah. We what's really cool is, so along with the release of the video, we started pushing it to radio with our label, and we're super excited because this week it was the #1 most added Christian rock single for Christian radio. So we're pretty excited about that because it pretty much guarantees that we're going to chart on the Billboard, hopefully this next month. So we can be looking for that. That's what kind of been a bucket list thing for me. And so when the label called and gave us the news, I kind of freaked out. It was
kidding.
awesome.
Isn't that like every band's goal?
Pretty much, yeah. That's a pretty big bucket list. I mean, other than like being on the Grammys, it's a pretty big thing.
Sure, that's the next step, man. Just keep going.
Yeah, no, that would be awesome.
So, all right. Now you mentioned you mentioned what over 100. You've toured in over 100 cities.
Well, we'll generally play 100 to 150 shows like a year. And so like right now we're on a 2.5-month tour. I'm actually in Texas right now. I'm from Washington. So we'll tour throughout the year. We'll pretty much tour everything west of the Mississippi. Every now and then I'll fly out with another group. I sometimes get hired to play keys for some other groups, and I'll play some shows on the East Coast with them. But for majority of the time, we'll play pretty much most of the 50 states. We haven't been to Alaska yet or Hawaii, but pretty much everything in mainland America we'll play at.
Wow, that's amazing. So you mentioned you do lead and you do vocals for your band, but you mentioned you do keys as well.
Yeah, I'm a piano player. I started out as a classical piano player at the age of 7. My parents enrolled me in it, and I was absolutely terrified of the piano teacher. But after a while, I started to really enjoy it. And but classical piano is so much different than contemporary music. So it gave me the technique. But then I remember going to my first Christian festival called Creation Fest, and it rocked. It was I'd never heard music played that way. I'd only heard Beethoven and all those guys, and to hear some of these bands just play rock and roll just really inspired me and grabbed a hold of me. And I still play classical music every now and then, but my heart is in rock and roll. So
that's great. Yeah, Creation Fest is a big deal. I mean, especially in the the Christian music scene, it's a very big player.
I think it's the biggest Christian music festival in the U.S. right now.
Yeah, okay, that doesn't surprise me. Great. So you've been all around, you've been all over the place doing stuff. That's pretty awesome. So now I have to get a little bit more on the news side of things here. Apple Music just launched. Taylor Swift let her opinion know. Let's hear your opinion on Apple Music.
Well, I think, I honestly, Taylor and Apple Music probably were in cahoots about the whole deal, but the heart of the message of what she was saying is right. It's art needs to be protected. When art isn't protected and artists aren't paid for their work, regardless of any field, it discourages art from being created. And that's intellectual property laws are some of the most important out there, for society to move forward, not just in art, but in technology and anywhere. And so when you lapse on one of these industries, you create a precedent that can damage everything else. So I think it was awesome that she did it. Whether her intentions were good or not, who knows? No one knows of that. Her branding is absolutely spotless. It's amazing. And everyone loves her for it. But yeah, I totally agree with her. I really am happy with Apple for going along with it and changing things. They're probably one of the very few companies I know right now that has had someone bring something up about, artists being paid and is willing to change it, especially on the fly. That was pretty amazing to me. especially because they're going to lose money on that, since they're offering their service for free.
Right. So, and you mentioned that they may have been in cahoots. I personally, I'm not saying this is how it went, but let's theoretically say, you know, ta- Apple let certain select partners, like important people, like Taylor Swift, say, "Hey, in a few months we're going to be launching this. These are the details. Please be on board." And then maybe she said, "Hey, maybe something to the effect less eloquently of what she ended up saying later, and saying, I'm not really on board with this. I don't think it's fair." And then Apple said, well, it's a compromise. And so they probably had everything ready for the launch. So they didn't want to change any of it. But then they're like, well, we'll fix it right afterwards. And we'll make it a PR thing for you. I don't know. That's just my own little.
That makes sense. I mean, that makes the most sense mathematically for PR and everything. I mean, it's genius. It's absolutely genius. And I mean, a lot of these big music places, Spotify or Pandora or any of those, they are owned by the labels. And so it's just one big PR machine, any controversy that's stirred up with that stuff. And so, but really, Apple's always been revolutionary in their way they've done the music industry. They flipped it up on its head, and in some ways it's really great for artists, in other ways it's just great for the public. But we can always count on them to innovate, and I think they're going to make the best choice, because in the end, the best choice is for new music to be made, and so they'll figure out a way for artists to support themselves from their service.
Right, and that takes me into sort of how people are consuming music nowadays. How do you feel about sort of Spotify, Pandora, this new way of streaming music? Has that been helpful to you? Has that been a hindrance to you as a band?
Man, it depends. I absolutely hate Spotify. Like I love it for myself, and I think any consumer would love it. But the thing that a lot of people don't know about Spotify is that when Spotify was launched, the labels, in agreement with Spotify, said, hey, you know what? If we're going to be a part of this and we're going to give you our catalogs, like you have to give us 2/3 ownership of your future stock prices. And so, labels and everyone are pretending to complain that Spotify's taking revenue or whatever. But, in reality, Spotify still runs in the red every year for its business. It's not a profitable company necessarily yet. And it's because a lot of its profits are owed to labels. And so labels are the ones taking the money from that. And so I just get bothered by the fact that, we're signed to an independent label. So we don't have anyone with stock shares in that. And yet we're affected by their choices. And so they make money off of our music when we're not necessarily connected at all with them other than Spotify. And so what just stinks about Spotify, I guess, is that if you're not playing the game with them, but if you're going to play the game, you're still going to lose. I think it's something like you have to have 100 million plays to make the average. Like if you worked at McDonald's, you would make just as much as someone who got 100 million plays on Spotify. And 100 million plays is a lot. Like that's a phenomenal amount. I love Pandora though. Pandora rocks.
Pandora. Now, why does Pandora rock and Spotify stinks?
Well, because Pandora's, the way their royalties are divvied out is more fair, or is fairer, I would say. And likewise, it's because they have the way their system works, where it's like you only have so many skips, and then you have to have previews, and you can't skip. Makes it so that people either have to listen to music or they have to listen to an ad, which generates revenue. So artists are paid on a per stream basis, are paid better for that. Whereas with Spotify, it's like a tenth of a cent per stream. So I mean, you don't make any money on Spotify, and it's just a bummer. Spotify is a bummer. I hope they figure it out to where it succeeds, because it can succeed. But with the new innovation of Apple Music, I think Apple Music will be kicking them to the curve soon.
Interesting. Okay, so fascinating. I remember my brother asking you. He said, if I left my computer on repeat on your newest album, and I left it there, like, how much, and I left it there for 24 hours, like how much money would you guys get?
Let's see. So it's a 3-minute
or something.
We can do the math right here. It's a 3-minute song and 24 hours. So that's 20 plays a minute. So that's, what is that? Let me pull up my calculator on my phone. I've never been good at math. I'm a good musician, but not a good math person.
Join the club, man.
20 times 24. So that's 480 times 0.0. So yeah, you'd make, there's so many zeros. You'd make, you'd make like nothing. If he left it on for a year, I think we made like $2. I don't know if he left it on a year, but I know last year for Spotify, we made like $2. So, yeah.
Total?
It was awesome.
Yeah. Awesome. Like awful awesome.
Yeah, most definitely.
Oh my goodness. So yeah, I guess there is a big difference between Spotify and Pandora. That's interesting. You're right. I don't think most people, I know I certainly didn't realize that. And then of course, on top of all the money you barely make with Spotify and Pandora and then streaming services, it's like people still find ways to get around playing the ads, or like they'll find
Yeah.
ways to like skip the song just before it ends so they don't have to listen to the ad, or they'll use an ad blocker. Or they have all these
Yeah.
like
It's-
because you know the damage that does. Do you still use them because you like the convenience, or do you actively?
You can't not use them. It's free. It's right there. I try and use YouTube, like if I'm going to, but the thing is, Spotify audio quality is most of the time going to be more consistent and better than YouTube. So I use it. But generally, like if I find myself going back to a song on Spotify and listening to it over and over, I will go and buy it, from the artist. That's what's fair, you know. But
We don't really live in a fair society of fair-minded people.
Yeah,
So.
what's interesting though is, so the history of the music industry, how record labels and artists made money was that, you always had this every time, like the platform and media change. So you would have, in the 1960s, you'd have you'd have a big record, and then there was and then there were CDs. And so what record labels make money was they would re-release old releases on the new format. And so every time a new format came out, you could almost guarantee that you're going to make another, $30 million because you're going to re-release it. And so the problem that happened with the digital age is that this is right now what we think is the final, format for music. You can't really get much smaller than air, and so new music releases, like the music industry shrunk something like 30% when that happened, because labels couldn't re-release music. And so it's not just because people are doing Spotify, it's also because the business model was inflated. It wasn't a real business model.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then what we're noticing too is that artists are kind of going back to the vinyl. Like what's all that about? Is that is that an aesthetic thing, or what is that?
It technically sounds better. It's because it's a real it's the real pure data, and it's going to sound warmer to a normal ear. You won't be able to hear it. So I have not a problem, but it's always interesting to me that people that couldn't tell me the difference between a sine wave or anything, audio related, think that they want a record machine, because there's really no difference unless you can hear the intricacies. And so a lot of it's just for the nostalgic value. But then again, these people are older, so they're not older, they're younger, so they never really grew up with that. So what is the point? I don't know.
Yeah, well, and they're hipsters, so does anything they do make sense? Come on.
Yeah, I know, right? Seriously.
Not calling out some of my friends. I have a lot of friends that do
I
not
call the
all,
hipster too.
but that's all right. Being hipster is not the worst thing. There's worse things to be called. But one thing I've come to understand with vinyl is that how records were made previously is actually completely different than, like, they're made more digitally now, so you're not even getting the full even the full original sound that you had back then.
No,
right?
and if you don't have a good player like for it, it doesn't make any difference. You have to have a really good player for yourself to hear even the minuscule difference that you're gonna, and good speakers. It's just like you have to have it all, and by the time you invest all that, you might as well just had it on digital and bought some really good speakers. It's interesting, but I mean, whatever works. And I think it's a business ploy, because people are willing to pay $20-$25 for a big vinyl disc, whereas the markup is so much more than a CD. It works. I mean, it works for business, and people feel like they get something. So I think everyone's happy, and that's a good thing. It's just interesting.
Yeah, it is very interesting. Excuse me. I'm finding out all the time that, like, at least this generation, or what I feel like is this generation, is a sucker for nostalgia.
Yeah.
But reaching back before they were alive, right? Like, that doesn't always
It's interesting. Even the musical styles nowadays are reaching back to things from the 80s, and they're catering towards kids that are, in the age bracket of 12 to 16. And so those kids were never alive, obviously, back then. Neither I wasn't alive. I was born in the 90s, and so it's really interesting. I think it's true that everything recycles itself in a new way. I was just walking through the store the other day, and my parents were looking at some, I think it was in, where was it? I think it was in H&M, And they were looking at these clothing things. They're like, that's totally something I wore in middle school. And, and they were in middle school in the 70s and 80s. And it's just interesting, real interesting.
Yeah, and so I guess all that to say, as long as humans have existed, there has been stealing. And so the modern iteration of that looks like piracy, peer-to-peer sharing, and it's looked down upon as something very negative. I mean, you're stealing; it's against the law. But there are also some bands like the Decemberists that have said, "Hey, we don't advocate for piracy, but honestly, if it wasn't for peer-to-peer file sharing, we wouldn't have been big and wouldn't have been known because it got our name out there, like share with their friends." But like, to what degree do you feel like there's legitimacy in that claim compared to how much hurt and harm it really does to the music industry?
Well, so there's a few things. So the fact of the matter is, if you're a signed band and you're going to sell 100,000 records, the label's going to take most of the money that you make from those sales. Most of the money an artist makes is from radio play, and live shows, and selling T-shirts and whatnot. So when you steal music from an artist, like piracy or P2P, like it's not you don't affect them much financially necessarily, because you're not stealing much dollars out of them. But the thing that you do affect is that their sales numbers aren't as high. And so let's say, an artist has someone pirate, people pirate 200,000 copies of that song instead of buying them. Like that artist, that's the difference between an artist going gold and not going gold. And if you go gold as an artist, the amount you can charge for playing a show is a lot more. More people will buy tickets from you. You'll play at the Grammys, stuff like that. And so when you pirate music, you're essentially robbing an artist of opportunity. Whereas with other artists, like the Decemberists, like sometimes it's on that image, the image that they want to give their music away for free. But regardless, I mean, having sales numbers is always good. You can always command a higher price for shows. You can always command a higher price for, advertisements, any of that stuff. So that's how piracy, it doesn't damage an artist the traditional way people think. You're not actually stealing a lot of money from an artist, but you are stealing opportunity, which in a way is way worse.
Right. Fascinating. I also know, like, way before Apple Music, way before Spotify, Microsoft had this thing called the Zune Pass.
Oh, yeah.
$15 a month. You could not only stream as much music as you wanted, unlimited, and download as limited music on your devices, but you could keep 10 songs a month. Like that was, who wouldn't do that? Like, that is the best way. You pick 10 songs of the month. You're like, wow, I really like those. Just download them for free. Like, I can't imagine how much that harm that might have done. But it was great for consumers. Consumers loved
absolutely. There's always a give and take. And see, when you take away, scarcity, and you take away exchange, no pun intended, in an economic market, it really could screw things up. So it's interesting. We'll see. The music industry kind of dipped real bad for years, but it's on its way up. And so I'll be interested to see how people are formatting stuff. I know right now, I think Apple, or I know U2 was partnering with someone to make a format that can't be file shared, which, that for them, it kind of looks weird because they're going to sell 100 million singles no matter what. But it's good for the little guy, and we'll see what happens. I have no idea. We'll see. People are going to innovate because they need art. People need art regardless of what people say, and people always create art. So we'll see.
Yeah, with all the Linux users and Google fanatics, there's this big outcry for open source and everything being free. And I can see someone coming up with a file format that can't be file shared. It was sort of like when DRM was a big deal.
Yeah.
It's like people flipped out, like, what happened to the openness of the web? And so there's going to be huge backlash with that. But I think you're right. Like, I can't think of another way. Anyway, yeah, you're right. It'll innovate. But I guess we focus on sort of more of the negative aspects. But one thing I have noticed about your band in particular, Britt, is that you have utilized social media very well. You're on the right platforms and you're doing good stuff. So my question to you is, as a band, what are the social media platforms you put your most attention to? What are the ones you focus on?
Well, our two main ones that we focus on are Facebook and Instagram. Our main demographic is actually females 12 to 24. That's our main demographic, and if you look at the platforms they're mainly on Instagram. And then our main consumer demographic that actually buys stuff is male, female, ages 24 to 52. So those are the guys, those are the adults generally. The kids are, for some reason, they don't buy a lot of music. They just go stream it, like we were talking earlier. But the adults are still the ones that buy it. So that they're always on Facebook, and we have a few people, from that 12 to 24 demographic on Facebook, but majority of them are Instagram. So those are the two main places we focus.
Okay, and so it seems like your strategy might be like word of mouth stuff is with the younger
Mhm.
folks, and actual purchases are with older folks.
Exactly, yeah. And we found as consumers of this age, like we're all very customer service and differentiating. We need differentiation in business. So that's why you see businesses like Chick-fil-A or In-N-Out Burger. I can only think of fast food ones right now because we are on the
Are you
road and
hungry?
eat fast food. Yeah. But they have like incredible service. They have a whole position dedicated to people just going out and being personable with customers. And so we found, with Instagram and Facebook, that our main strategy for using those sites, and the reason we use those sites, is simply because we have an opportunity to really reach out and actually interact with fans. We always talk from the stage at our live shows that we'll stick around and talk to any single person that wants to talk, as long as they want to talk, after the show. And then we extend that to our social media, and that we run all of it. And if they message us or they email us or they Instagram us, that we'll follow them back and we'll talk to them. So that's been really awesome. And what's great about it is it's transformed, what most people would say are fans into more friends and family, which has been really, really neat to see.
Right, and I think when you extend that invitation of, you know, here's a little bit about what we're doing behind the scenes, or this is what traveling's like, or something more intimate. People like that.
They
People
do.
really cherish it actually, and so to do that, it seems like, oh cool, he's just talk this band just like talking to his fans, whatever. But that's a big commitment from your end. It's
It
time.
is. I've woken up in the morning because I'll add people on my personal profile too. I'll do all of that. We just want to be available. And I'll wake up, sometimes I'll have 20, 30, 40, 50 messages in the morning. And it's a real discipline to, make sure you go and actually message those people back and interact with them, because that's what matters. And at the end of the day, like that's what people are what matter in this business and just in life. If you disregard people and you push them aside, it's not good for your business, and it's just not good for you personally.
Wow. So I think, as you continue to get bigger and you get to the next step, Emmys, cough cough. I mean, what's going to have to happen is you're going to have to get more people involved, more managers, and
Exactly.
ways to make your time, streamline your time, and figure out what
Yeah.
to do with all this stuff, because you don't want to lose that, right? I'm sure
No.
you do not want to lose making those friends, and also when you make fans into friends, you're also building advocates, not out of
Exactly.
Britt told me that I should talk about his band to people. It's like, I just met this guy Britt, I just met this guy, I met his brother, I met the other band members, and I said, these guys are great. I'm going to tell the world about them because they're so
Exactly.
great.
And that's how the law of multiplication works, is that, if you can make friend, like your friend is going to rep your band. So if you can genuinely become a friend with someone, they'll probably rep your band too. And at the same time, you get a friend out of it, which rocks.
Right. Now, the question is what to do with all the friends that rock, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's crazy. It's funny how more often than ever now, I'm finding myself saying no to things. It's very, very hard for me to do. Like, uh, hey, we're having a barbecue about this person I sort of know. It's like, do you take that initiation and say, well, they're a connection, they're a friend, they reached out to me. Do I reciprocate, or do you say no, not right now? Like, it's so tough to make that call sometimes. And from your perspective, I'm sure like that you come up with those questions all the time.
Yeah, and I think for us, we're really clear about where our vision is, what we want to do, when where we're going, and I think we're very clear with other people in terms of that. And so people understand, we just keep ourselves busy, following what we think we're supposed to do. And a lot of times that really helps dictate, what we can and can't do. There's a girl in Arizona, and she, she wanted us to fly out to New York or somewhere or something, and we just couldn't financially do it at the time to go play for that. And it's just you have to operate within realities. But we, our vision and our goal is the fact that we want to pursue as many people as possible. And as we get bigger and grow, like right now we crew all of our own stuff. So when we're on the road, like when setting up all the sound system, all the lights, we're the crew for that. And so as we grow, I think we'll have more people come alongside us, and we'll hire more people to do that stuff. So we have more time to actually, be personable with our fans. And eventually it will, if this is what we're supposed to do, and it gets bigger, and certain people will fall through the cracks, but we're going to do our best to be as personable to each person. And I think when people see that you're trying to do that and you're trying to treat everyone fairly in that manner, they understand if they fall through the cracks, and there's always more opportunities.
Exactly. It's funny though, like people's like little tactics. And I'm saying for people that are like on the very top, they have 1 million Twitter followers or something, and it's like every time they produce a new piece of content, you see replies like, notice me 3 million exclamation points.
Yeah.
I love you forever if you follow me. It's like, whoa, like have you forgotten like the reason for wanting to connect with this person? Remember, like whatever initially had you want to reach out to them was probably like you want to connect with them, and now it's become a goal of just getting a reply. Like that's not,
It's interesting how we've moved from everyone's become a number on social media. It's really interesting, and so trying to fight back against that has been difficult at times. Because you look at your Facebook page and you look at another band's Facebook page and you're like, well, why do they have more interaction than we do? And you just have to realize, I think who said it? I think it was Socrates said that, true nobility is not being superior to another man, but it's being superior to yourself. And so we just know we're on the path, I want to be superior in the way I interact with other people, because I want to be better than I was yesterday, and but it's difficult. Like viewing it as a number is real easy to do.
Yeah, no kidding. And so maintaining that human element, it can be done. It just takes lots of work. So what would you say, can you give me an example of, I'll sort of go specifically to social media and then maybe branch out to overall. What's an area you invested in social media or an online platform or something, and you're all in, and then it ended up failing? Can you give any example of that, or has that not happened yet?
We haven't had any catastrophic failures yet, but we've had opportunities that we squandered. So we released a song like 4 years ago, and we did like this thing called Tweet for Track, and it was basically if someone tweeted our song, they would get the song for free. And so it was cool, and all, but the problem with it was we hadn't built up our Twitter following at all, and we still haven't. That's something that we've failed in general, and that we're trying to get back on right now. So when we did have that opportunity, it lost its effectiveness, because we were on the top, we were the top downloaded and tweeted about track on that site for a long time. I think it was like 2 or 3 weeks, and which is huge when you're going up against some pretty big artists on there. And the problem with it is like our Twitter wasn't big enough, or didn't have the foundation at the moment to support the publicity it was getting. So people were tweeting about it, but people went and looked, it's like, oh, this person has 100 followers, and so why would I follow that? And so that was somewhat wasted. It did get our name out there in a way, but we didn't maintain or retain the followers that I wished we could have from it, simply because we hadn't put the prep work in.
Well, there's a great book you should buy. I don't know if I play my own book on my own podcast. That's an all new low.
I could do it for you. It's called Beyond Tweeting.
Wow, how'd you hear about that? I can't imagine how you would have heard about that. Let's see. So let's
Facebook ad.
Yeah, I've never spent a single quarter on Facebook ads ever.
Really? Okay.
Yeah,
Nice.
little
Good for
fun
you.
fact there. So all right. So now overall, like, have you, and there might be some politics here, so I don't want to like burn any bridges for you, but do you mind speaking to like a struggle you had as a band that you learned maybe a valuable lesson out of, that you've become better out of, or I just want to hear, because I'm sure you face a lot of tough decisions.
All the time. As a band, one of the huge things and the most important things is that you agree about where you're going, and we've had members before that we weren't all on the same page. My brother and I, he's the drummer. We're single. We love rock and roll. We love playing shows. And so our goal, just at face value is I want to just tour the country playing shows and loving people. Like that's our goal. We want to do it as much and as many places as we can. And that's kind of always been the stated goal of our band. But every now and then, sometimes we'd have people that weren't a part of that. And so when you don't have someone that's on board with the overall vision of the band, it gets really difficult, because they're your process for making decisions becomes complicated. And you just can't, like I think in the Bible, the book of Amos, it says that how can two people walk, in the same direction when they're not walking together? Or how can two people walk together if they're not walking in the same direction? And so, that's always been a struggle. But, right now with our current lineup, we all know where we're going. So the only things we argue about is how we get there, not necessarily where we're going. And, and so that, every now and then we'll have, issues about like, oh, should we post that? Or, should we say that or whatever? But it's never been a huge argument per se, because we all know where we're going. So we all know we're on the same team, if that makes sense.
That's great. That's really good to hear. Let's see. Now, where have you found some success? Where, if you could think of one, think of a decision maybe that you made as a band and you said, you know what, let's just try this and see where it goes. And it ended up being a big success.
Yeah. We did, well, actually, with this newest music video, we've hardly ever paid for posts, like big budget. Every now and then I'll boost something for like $3 on Facebook. But this time around we did we paid for a post for our music video, and we invited people to share, the music video. And so at the end of the day, I think we had something like 55,000 impressions just from that one Facebook post, which turned out to be quite a big surprise for us. So that's the quickest success that I can think of right now.
That's a great example. That's a huge win. I don't think I can even count that high. So that's impressive. Let's see. And here's some fun stuff. What are some of the earliest moments you had as a band? Maybe just you and your brother, and you're thinking, let's take this seriously. Let's take this to the next step. If you can think back to the beginnings.
Oh yeah, man. I remember, we did I think the very earliest memory I think of us having a dream for being in a band. We had a band. My family promoted an event for a band from Nebraska to come and play a show. And there were like 300 people showed up, which is huge for a town of 700. And
wow, like half the freaking town was there.
Oh, literally, quite literally. And it was awesome because those guys, hung out with us, and we were able to. They had won some awards, and I think they were a Grammy-nominated band, and so they were just big stuff. And so they had let us help them set up and stuff. And so that moment, like when we were setting that up, and I saw them play rock and roll, I realized, Oh, go ahead.
Take a break. Dog's freaking out. All right, so kind of recap from your last sentence so I can edit this.
Yeah. So I, from seeing that band and having them help us, or having that let us help them set up their gear and promote the show, like I realized, that I wanted to do that. And so that was pretty cool. And then, we did our first tour 4 years ago, and, not very good shows, as any first tour should ever be, but it was just so fun to be able to travel the US and see places and play for people and just hear all these people. And then I guess the full circle moment for me was we got asked to the very first Christian music festival we ever played at, was Creation, the festival that
Wow.
They kind of inspired me to love rock and roll. And so that was a pretty big deal for me to get up there and, like, hey, what's up, Creation? That was like the first words I heard when I went to that festival from the stage. And I remember I saw Reliant K at Creation, and it was full circle for me. That was a huge moment.
No kidding. So that was one of your first experiences as a band?
No, not first experiences. First like festival we were ever put on, which was, pretty big deal to be put on that as the first one.
Well, no kidding. Your first festival. So how long after you kind of started as a band entity did you end up going to Creation?
I think it was about a year and a half after we got.
Yeah,
we got to play which is pretty awesome.
Sorry, that you cut out. Can you repeat that?
We got to play on this thing called the Fringe stage. It was like the stage for like the super kind of edgy rock and roll bands. So we played on that, and then the next year they had us on the main stage in the evening, and so that was pretty rad. And then we played on the main stage last year as well. So that's always been so close to my heart because I grew up going to that festival, and that's kind of where rock and roll made its way into my heart, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, let's go right on to what's the most rewarding part about playing.
Sorry, say again?
What's the most rewarding part about playing music and doing what you do and being a band?
I mean, it's people. Like the best feeling we've talked about as a band, the best feeling is to play a show and at the end of the show, like you're done and you know everything went right, like being able to talk to people. Like that's my favorite part, because I get to hear about them. I get to really, because you, for some reason, when you get up on stage, people give you this platform to speak into their lives. And so when we have that power, like when you realize you have that power to really make or break someone's day, and it's nice to be able to just make someone's day by spending 10 minutes talking to them. And so that's like one of the most rewarding things. Just talking with kids, or even adults, about someone lost a family member in a car accident, and just really encouraging them through that, or talking through how a kid could get help from depression or cutting, and stuff like that. I remember we played at this camp, and the leader of the camp had this girl in his group, and she had been talking with me about, she'd been cutting and she had depression and stuff. And I remember messaging the leader saying like, hey, this girl's telling me this stuff. And, that leader had been trying to get to her for a long time, but he'd never been able to, because he was a leader. And so I was able to talk to her about that and talk her through that stuff simply because I played up on stage, which sounds stupid, but it's really cool at the same time, because, the stage gives you that power to help people. And that's probably the most rewarding part.
Wow, that's really cool. I think the last thing I want to end on before I get into the last couple of sections of this particular show is, this just came to my head. What happens when, maybe you'll have a few openers while you play, and what happens when there's an opener that's just really, really bad? And maybe everyone knows it or something. Like, is it sort of a responsibility of the following act to say, hey, weren't they great, everyone, or something? Like, to what degree do you deal with that?
Well, we always shoot to be honest, and this is kind of a secret, and so I'm sharing it with you and whoever listens to this, which is kind of terrifying, I guess.
Well, don't share it if you're terrified.
Well, I mean, you can always say honest things like, hey man, you killed it. Like, like it's honest, but they usually will take it, as a good thing. And the thing is, everyone's in a different place. And so I say, give it up. If they didn't do very good, I'll say, hey, give it up for those guys. Like, they killed it, they rocked it, or whatever. Really enjoyed them as people, because I usually do. Like, a lot of times, bands that are starting out, they're really nice guys. They haven't let the industry get to them, and so they're awesome and nice. And there's been a lot of bands we play with that are equally just as good as we are, and so that's also kind of intimidating to get up and play after them. But we've been that band, the bad band that opened for the great band, and so it is intimidating though, and it is sometimes hard to figure out where you sit in that.
Sure. Oh man, I don't need to name them specifically, but I was at a concert to see Epica, one of my favorite symphonic power metal bands from the Netherlands. And since they're like unheard of in Seattle, like they had all these unknown opening bands. They had like 3 other ones, and the opening was it was so bad. Like at one point they like threw out their stickers and no one moved in.
Oh no!
Like, it was textbook definition of just awkward and bad, and I just felt so bad for them.
I hate it when bands do that, when that happens. It is never good to make an audience feel awkward like that.
Yeah, and so and with all that in mind, like I just that made me think for the first time. I thought about I have some friends that are in bands, and I have friends that are musicians. Like how do you decide that there's a certain point where you say we're good enough or we're liked enough that these are valuable, but then like how do you determine when that is, or else you kind of make a fool out of yourself? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Now you're talking about openers, right?
Yeah, for the most part.
Yeah. Sometimes this sounds shady, but sometimes it's good to have a bad opener, because because then you look better, but
Right.
at the same time though, I feel bad for the audience, because it's never nice to feel awkward for an artist as an audience. And so, the thing that I just never can get over though is a band that isn't very good, but thinks they're amazing and acts that way from the stage. Those type of people are very hard to deal with, and there's no excuse for them. And that pompous attitude will make it more awkward. Like those guys, you never throw stickers from your stage as a show if you're an opener. You never do that. It's just not because you can't control how they're going to respond to that. Yeah,
that's a really good point. Man, okay, that goes for humor too. Like people trying to crack a joke and no one laughs. I bet that's.
No. Oof.
All right, well, now it is time. Actually, no, before we do that, last thing. We got to listen to about your band and about you. How can listeners support your band best?
Yeah, so you can go check us out. Just follow us on our social media sites. Every one of them is /The Exchange Rock, except for Instagram, which is The Exchange Band. We're trying to work on getting that handle, but right now it's The Exchange Band. You can also check us out on iTunes, and you can listen to us on Spotify. We're on Apple Music now too.
You want to be a jerk?
Yeah, exactly. But if you're going to listen to Spotify, like if you listen to it more than 5 times, just buy the stinking song. Like, just do it. But yeah, you can buy our music. The best way is on iTunes. You just search The Exchange. Our newest single is called Heartbeat. So if you search The Exchange Heartbeat, you'll find it on there.
Great.
And we're always available, like I said. So if you message us or email us or go to our website at theexchangerock.com and email us, like we'll always reply to it.
Yeah, you guys got a sweet landing splash page at theexchangerock.com right now. So
we do. Go check it out.
Those appreciators of websites, for that reason alone, you should check it out.
Yeah.
Awesome splash page. All right, so now it is time for the Ask David V section of the show. I ask questions and you answer them. An answer to the last episode's question was, what kind of podcast would you make if you could make one? And because I did it within less than 24 hours, I didn't get any responses. So, hey, Britt, if I put you on the spot, if you could make a podcast right now, what would the topic be?
Oh, snap. I would definitely do something. I would probably do it on the thinking logically through some of the political things of today. So whether it be like the gay marriage ruling or whether it be, about the Greece thing, I think there's an untapped market of intellectuals that would really enjoy a podcast like that.
Nice.
So essentially conservative talk radio, but podcast.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't know what kind of a space that looks like right now. It might be kind of untapped, like you're saying. That's an interesting thing to look into. So now the question of this episode is, based on the theme of this episode, what is your favorite band? It can be one artist, it can be several artists, it can be maybe a music. And actually, Britt, now when I'm saying this, I'm saying it to my listeners.
Yes.
But
that's such a hard question. I'm sighing at your question. Like that's just.
Might as well ask you, actually, if you can think of at least a few inspirational bands. Let's put it that way for you guys. What would you consider?
This is for me now.
Sure.
Okay. I'd say like Coldplay, Switchfoot, and Need to Breathe. Those 3 bands. Those are huge for me.
Awesome. If you had them right off the bat, you probably get asked that question a lot.
Every now and then, yeah.
So great. So if you have a response, you have an answer for your favorite band, feel free to send me a tweet or post on Instagram with the hashtag AskDavidV with your answer. You can also go to beyondtweeting.com/contact and do it there. Now, I'm not expecting responses to every one of these, considering there's going to be 5 different questions this week. So if I don't get all of them in time, or people aren't able to submit, that's okay. The social network of the day is Hype Machine, and I don't know a ton about Hype Machine. Britt, do you mind giving us the rundown on what
I would love to. So Hype Machine, it's crazy. So what it is it's a site that is connected to over 800 around the global internet. And so what this...
Sorry, you cut off again.
Oh, bummer. So what Hype Machine is it's a site that connects 800 music blogs. And what it does is it takes those music blogs, basically will say like, hey, they report daily to Hype Machine. This is the music we featured today. And so Hype Machine gathers the information from all those blogs, and then it creates a list featured that day. So if someone gets on 600 blogs, like Hype Machine lists that out. And so there's a lot of people that use that for discovering new music. It's also a really great way if you go and discover new blogs, basically, because you can look at all the blogs that Hype Machine uses. And so it's been really awesome for music artists. We haven't had a lot of success for it yet. It really turns stuff. Whereas we're more...
Start from you haven't had a lot of success in it. Say that again, because that all got cut off. I think something's body with
sorry.
No, it's all right.
We haven't had a lot of success for it because it doesn't really fit the format of our music. But it's really cool for users simply because you can look at what the most popular music that is coming out is, and so a lot of the bands are unsigned. They're new. A lot of the blogs are just feature some incredible music, and it's just really neat because you have all these blogs out in the internet, but this place kind of sums it all up for you, if that makes sense.
That's great. So Hype Machine sounds very compelling. If you want to check it out, you can go to hypem, that's the word hype with the letter m.com, or they have an iOS and Android application. They do not have a Windows application at the moment. Let's take a trip to the app graveyard. These are the applications and services that are no longer with us. Today's dearly departed application is Napster. For those of you that remember what Napster is, it was released in 1999, and it was sort of the first of its kind for peer-to-peer file sharing, and it got, as you might imagine, in tons of legal trouble, ended up being acquired by Rhapsody later on, and now it's just Rhapsody sort of absorbed it, and it's not really much of a thing now, but it was pretty infamous for sort of pioneering something new, something edgy, something barely legal, and then sort of crashing and burning at the end. Do you have any memories, Britt, of Rhapsody? Or not Rhapsody, Napster?
Napster, I don't a whole lot. I do know that was kind of the catalyst for this digital music revolution, though. So, I mean, pretty much everything from Spotify to the new digital laws that govern our, how music is streamed is because of Napster. So it is not a very nice thing, but it's great for the consumer. Yeah.
Yeah, it did sort of push this. And yeah, honestly, I was before I had internet, so I don't remember that at all, really. But it's funny to look back and see, what it caused and the controversy that it stirred up.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so now we are on to immature impersonations. Maybe they're good, maybe they're bad, but they're certainly immature. All right, now, Britt, are you familiar with Thor Tolo?
Oh, I am.
Here goes nothing. He has incessantly requested that I impersonate, because he's heard that I've impersonated him before, and I have a policy where I do not impersonate people to their faces, but that has nothing to do with recording an impersonation. So here goes nothing. Right. Here is my Thor Tolo impersonation. Here we go. All right, get this. This is David, all right? Welcome to my podcast. In the next 55 minutes and 34 seconds, I will pontificate about how smart I am about social media. I'm kidding, of course. There are people that do enjoy this show. No, I'm serious. I'm not trying to be flip here. People actually do listen and enjoy the Beyond Tweeting podcast, as well as they should. Now, what did I just do there? I was betraying bias. I was testing you guys.
Bravo. Thor, you are the man. David, you are the man for being able to impersonate him.
Thanks. I actually, little known fact, I was in a voice and movement course at Northwest, and I chose the final. You had a final assignment, and so my final assignment was impersonating like 10 different professors at Northwest University and explaining how Super Smash Bros. The history of Super Smash Bros. Melee in the game.
Oh man!
On YouTube, I actually have on a private listing. I have a upload recording of me impersonating 10 different professors. I didn't share it.
You've got to send it to me.
Okay, I'll share it to you privately because I don't want to share it publicly because I'm afraid I'll offend some people, and I don't want any hard feelings. But there was like 2 other people in that class, so I felt like it was okay for that. And my professor got a kick out of it. Crystal Hemke really thought it was funny.
Oh, that's awesome.
Thank you. So that's just about all the time we have for this episode of the Beyond Tweeting podcast. Thank you so much, everyone, for subscribing, for watching, for listening, for sharing, commenting, all that good stuff. For all things Beyond Tweeting, visit beyondtweeting.com. To subscribe, search Beyond Tweeting in your favorite podcast application or visit beyondtweeting.com/subscribe. If a show is going on right now, which it is, you can watch live at beyondtweeting.com/live. Britt, this is the part of the show where there's one anticlimactic line and you say it and then we end the show. So it is up to you now.
All right, keep rocking.